You have a background that is far from traditional. How has your time in corporate sales shaped your approach to consulting and problem solving within the Power Platform?
I worked in corporate sales for 10 years before I realized that I was really bad at it. But it's really funny because when you look at all the people in Power Platform land today, most of them come from somewhere else.
At one point, you had become stagnant in your career. How has this reshaped your work ethic, the career shift into Power Platform consulting, and your approach to personal growth?
I made two critical errors. The first error that I made was that I
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Power Talks. My name is Griffin, the host of the Citizen Developer channel, and today I'm joined by special guest Nathan Rose. Now, Nathan, how you have a background that is far from traditional, is what you had said, and I would agree. How has your time in corporate sales shaped your approach to consulting and problem solving within the Power Platform?
Sure. Hey, Griffin. Thrilled to be here. Big fan of the channel and the show. So, yeah, it's funny. I worked in corporate sales for about 10 years before I realized that I was really bad at it and tired of begging for my job every quarter because I never made quota. Um, but it's funny because when I transitioned out of sales into business analysis and eventually consulting, I always used to say I have a non traditional background because a lot of traditional people in our field studied computer science, worked as developers, that type of thing. But it's really funny because when you look at kind of all the people in Power Platform land today, most of them come from somewhere else. Mark Smith, who's the OG of MVPs in our space, was a groundskeeper. Natalie Leanders was a hairdresser. Craig Smith was, I think, a finance clerk. And then I come from the world of sales. So it's actually not that non-traditional anymore. Like almost everybody in Power Platform land did something else before we landed in consulting and what we do today. Um, but I would say specifically sales experience is hugely helpful because sales is all about people and what we do as consultants is all about people, right? The tech is just kind of an add-on, but it's all about the people, helping them solve their problems, being able to empathize with them, see the world through their eyes, communicate with them, and ultimately persuade them as well. So even though my non-traditional background is actually kind of traditional in Power Platform land, it's still been hugely beneficial. So
Sure. I want to get into some of the transferable skills
yeah,
and things that you learn there, especially as you're talking about the skills of sales, because I think that's really interesting and I'm interested to hear what you have to say. But first, you shared with me that at one point you had become stagnant in your
yeah,
career,
yeah,
and I kind of wanted to shape you. How has this reshaped your work
yeah,
ethic? I mean, the career shift into Power Platform consulting
yeah.
and your approach to personal growth.
Yeah, sure. So 17 years ago, I moved to New Zealand from the States. So I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and I live in Auckland, New Zealand today. And when I first moved here, I contracted back to the company that I worked for in the States. And I had a pretty sweet deal, right? I got paid in US dollars, which meant I got like two New Zealand dollars for every American dollar. I worked out of my house, which 17 years ago was really not a thing like it is today. And I got to travel all over Asia and Australia, meeting clients and whatnot. And so I'm like, this is a pretty sweet deal. And I made two critical errors. So the first error that I made was that I overestimated my value and my worth to the company. So when you're working for a company, your value is relative to what you can help them solve today and what they think you can help them solve in the future. And unfortunately, I had kind of been one of the stars earlier in my career, but I stopped learning and growing, and the needs of the company had moved on. So I made that mistake. The other mistake that I made was I just kind of assumed that life was pretty good and it was going to continue that way. And so about 3 years after I moved here, I was told, "Hey, we don't need you anymore." And it was a big moment for me because I was not prepared for the job market here in New Zealand. I pretty much worked for this company out of the States. I had been working with clients in Australia and Asia, but I really didn't have any network or contacts or really know what the market required here. So it was a tough moment. I ended up doing a contract sales role at Microsoft here in New Zealand. I helped them launch CRM Online, which we now know today as Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. So, but it was a tough moment, and for me, it was one of those times where I just said, you know what, I am never making this mistake again. I am never going to get too comfortable. I'm always going to learn and grow and make sure that I am staying ahead of the curve so that whatever's coming down the road, I'm ready for it. Because yeah, it's not fun to wake up and suddenly realize, hey, the world's moved on and I'm not prepared for it. So yeah,
Yeah, so in getting to know you, you said a quote, "Life's not fair, so don't
yep,
complain and get on with it."
yep,
I feel like I'm the type of person that likes to hear it how it is and has pretty thick skin,
yep,
and I don't know, maybe that's just the athlete in me or growing up with
yep,
the tough coaches and an
yeah,
amazing dad who also just told me to rub dirt in it at the same time,
yep,
like part of me thinks, okay, if I were to tell my wife that when she's sad, that would probably not result in a
yeah. Don't do
positive
that.
experience. So I'm trying to think like, okay, what does this mean?
Yep,
How do you apply this
yeah,
to your life? Like, how has this mindset helped you
yep.
handle challenges in your career?
Yeah. So I've been blessed with two parents who have loved and supported me unconditionally, and even through me doing some pretty stupid stuff. And one of the ways that they loved me was that they never let me wallow in stuff, right? I mean, there's always stuff that happens in life. There's things, circumstances you're born into. There's just things that happen. Sometimes a ref makes a bad call or a boss is unfair or something like that. And it's really easy to wallow in it and be like, man, this is so unfair. The world's out to get me. But that's not going to help you, right? That's not going to get you anywhere. And at some point, you just have to accept that this is the way it is, and I've got to figure out what's next, and I've just got to push through it. And so for me, that's been hugely helpful. I mean, yeah, I mean, about probably 12 years ago, my life really fell apart. My sales career blew up. My marriage came to an end. I was homeless and jobless for a few weeks while I was kind of trying to figure stuff out. And it was one of those moments where you can choose to quit and just say, that's it. I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch TV and be done with it. Or you can say, all right, the situation sucks, but I'm just going to have to, I do the next thing that I need to do and push on. And so, by the grace of God and, the fact that my parents never let me wallow in things, I've managed to get to where I am today, which, yeah, yeah, I'm so grateful. So, yeah,
Completely. Yeah, so I think you made an important distinction in that you don't like ignore that something is hard or that it stinks, and you feel it for a second, but you don't wallow in it. It's kind
yeah,
of like the, I don't know, people have all sorts of different names for it, but like the 8 hour rule or the 24-hour rule,
yeah,
sleep
yeah,
on it, and then it's like, all right, back to work. So
yeah,
I I think that's an interesting distinction. One other thing on this, so Mark Smith, if you're listening, he's already name dropped you. Reach out. Would love to have you on the show. But besides that, you had mentioned that you were a part of Mark Smith's
yeah,
mentoring program, and you also are not the first guest to have either mentioned that
yeah,
program or been a part of that program.
yeah.
How how had this program influenced your career trajectory? I mean, I guess I'm not asking you for the secret sauce of the program,
Yeah.
but I mean, what advice would you give for
Yep.
others who are looking for mentorship and things you got out of that program?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this is the part where I'm probably going to talk for half an hour and
That's
just be a
okay.
quick fanboy. So, yeah, I hope you'll indulge me.
Go
Appreciate
ahead.
you being patient with me. I mean, TLDR, sign up for the 90-day mentoring challenge. It will change your life. But Mark and Meg Smith, who are really good friends, and I'm very blessed to count them as personal mentors of mine, and they're always willing to take my panicked calls and emails. Run the 90-day mentoring challenge, and they set it up probably 5 or so years ago. And it's designed for people like you and me, Griffin, people in our space, Power Platform, Dynamics 365. And it doesn't focus so much on the hardcore technical skills, but it focuses more on the ancillary but crucial skills to succeeding in this field. Things like communication and consulting and client management and building your personal brand and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's the course is like drinking from the fire hose. There is a lot of stuff that comes at you, but the content changed my life. I probably only implemented about 10% of what Mark teaches in the course, just because there's so much there. But I found that in the 2 years, so I first did it in 2022, and then I did a refresher earlier this year. And in the 2 years from when I did this mentoring challenge, I got promoted a few times. My income doubled. I became a Microsoft MVP, and I started building a brand that's starting to get recognized overseas. And so, yeah, this is all the stuff that has happened as a result of being in the challenge that Mark and Meg run. So I can't recommend it highly enough. It will absolutely change your life.
Okay. So, okay, you started mentioning just the soft skill development and the things you
Yep.
learned. I guess I want to segue back to the sales skills that you kind of
Yep.
talked about, and maybe these are some of the same things, or maybe they're not. But uh, one thing that I appreciate is that, at least for myself, and I think a lot of the people listening, like we're consultants in some capacity, and we are, you know, trying to listen to customers, talk to them, be empathetic, highly, high emotional intelligence. And I think that a lot of these skills are pretty similar as far
Yep.
as a seller. And I've never been, I mean, I guess I sold suits at Men's Warehouse in college, but it was
Yep.
mostly just helping people pick out what they wanted to wear for
Yep.
a
Yep.
funeral, which is sad. But, I would not consider myself a salesman in any
Yep.
way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But I enjoy like consuming salesman advice or sales techniques
Yep.
or sales skills because
Yeah.
part of me can't help but ignore the fact that they can be so similar, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
Eh,
100%. Yeah, it's. I mean, the skill set is so transferable. I mean, really the only difference, I mean, if we really are kind of boiling it down, the difference between a salesperson and what you and I do is the salesperson is responsible for closing the deal. That's something that's a complete mystery to me. I honestly do not understand why people buy stuff. And Which is why I'm no longer in sales. But but I mean, in terms of, yeah, being able to empathize, to understand, to see the world through their eyes. And I'd say probably the other thing that salespeople do that we don't, I think pre-sales consultants do it, but delivery consultants don't always do, is building that vision, taking them to that future place of, hey, I know what this is going to do. This is going to change your company. This is going to change your life. I was in a consulting session, gosh, probably a month ago with one of our sales guys, and he brought me in to just chat about Power Platform and governance with a client of ours, and they're looking to put in Power Platform. And at one point during the meeting, they're describing who works there, and I start getting really excited, and I'm like, "Hey guys, you're not going to believe this, but there's going to be people in this organization, people you would never expect, who are going to just latch onto this stuff, and you would be surprised, but the future stars of the Power Platform could be in your organization right now today." And so yeah, like I got very excited. They they were not quite as excited as I was, so it was a little awkward. But yeah, it's just being able to cast that vision. That I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
How do you foster such a positive and maybe even creative atmosphere in these conversations or like to kick off projects? Like, because I
Yeah,
don't think that's I think some people might really struggle with that.
yeah,
So what do you do? What are you thinking about? How are you
yeah.
communicating these sort of things?
Yeah, so I don't always do this well. I've had projects that have not had the best atmosphere. But for me, it's you've got to love the work, you've got to love the people, you've just got to really love this process of what we do. I don't know if you've ever listened to podcasts or seen interviews with musicians or movie stars. They always say the same thing. They always say, "I love the process," and I never knew what that meant because for me, I'm like, well, yeah, being a rock star would be awesome, but they're talking about practicing their instruments, writing songs, refining songs, practicing with the band, all the stuff that we're like, yeah, that doesn't sound so great. But that's the stuff they love, the grind. And so for us, it's you've got to love that grind of bringing these solutions to life and working with clients and working through their requirements. And so I think that's the first bit is just loving it and bringing that to the table. I think the other bit is just creating an environment of fun, of psychological safety, where it's like, hey, there are no stupid questions. We are all learning, and let's take the work seriously, but let's not take ourselves too seriously. Let's just have a bit of fun. And so for me, when you can create that kind of environment, it's just magic because people just they feel relaxed and they do their best work.
Yeah, I completely agree because I feel like now I was very fortunate and had a situation when I got introduced to the Power Platform that I was basically a part of this kind of training program where it was like, hey, 3 months, we're gonna focus on just zero to everything you need, not
Yep,
necessarily to be perfect, but everything you need to be a consultant on a project.
yep,
And so I if I was had to balance a full-time job or something in that scenario, it obviously would have taken more than 3 months. But like I like to think that the Power Platform is something that somebody can get into, and you could at least get PL 100 certified in a month,
definitely.
like working
Yeah,
full time and just in your
100%.
free time, you know. And so
Yeah,
I like to think that like that the Power Platform, low code development, Microsoft Dynamics, that these are things that a lot of people like. There is a low barrier of entry
yeah,
to novice level skill.
yeah,
Um, and so, but I also think, and I'm learning this more and more every day now that I'm, 2.5 years into my career, is how much I don't know, or how much I
yeah,
think I know, but I really don't.
yeah,
Um, and it, you're talking about like doing the stuff that nobody sees or that nobody wants to, or enjoying the process.
yeah,
And it like the first thing I think about is when it's like you are getting this darn Power Automate syntax flow and error in Power Automate, and you have no idea why. You're
yeah,
losing your mind.
yeah,
There's no
yeah,
blog posts about it. It's like,
yeah,
and you cannot figure it out. And you
yeah,
hate to admit the fact that you spent 3 hours and
yeah,
all you were missing was like a quote in a parenthesis,
yeah,
in your
yeah,
Power Effects or whatever, like
yeah,
in
yeah.
your
We've all been
expression.
there.
And so, like, I don't know. That's what my mind instantly
Yeah,
goes to
yeah,
when it's like doing the dirty work, like
yeah,
stuff nobody like. It's cool to post on LinkedIn or to post a podcast episode with some
yeah,
Microsoft MVP, but at the same time, like there's been countless hours of myself just like
yeah,
losing my mind,
yep.
wanting to rip my hair out, staring
Yeah,
at my computer.
you are not alone. It took me 2 weeks to build my first Cloudflow and Power Automate 5 years ago. So, yeah, it's totally normal.
Hey, if you are finding this video impactful or insightful, be sure to like and subscribe. But more importantly, if you are wanting to learn more about the Microsoft Power Platform, then you are going to want to check out the completely free self-paced course that has all of the hand-picked content directly from me as the first link down in the description down below. This is going to teach you everything you need to know about the Power Platform to get started and pass your first few Microsoft certifications. I can honestly say that as a Power Platform consultant myself that I love what I do, and I don't think many people in today's day and age can say that. If you are wanting to learn more, as I mentioned, be sure to check out the first link in the description down below to get in direct contact and connect with me. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
I can remember, so the first flow we had built, it was kind of like we had gotten kind of like an assignment or like a case study,
Yeah,
and we were working. There was like 5 or 6 of us, and we were all complete beginners.
yeah,
And we had to build a flow that were like when you updated a Dataverse record, it sent an email. It was like 3 actions. Like it
yeah,
was not a trigger, two
yeah,
actions, but it took us days, to like figure this out. And there was 5 of us,
yeah,
Googling bank, putting our heads together, asking
yeah,
questions, whatever. And now I just think about stuff like that and like, okay, it takes 30 minutes, whatever. Not to
Yeah,
test and everything, but like to at
yeah,
least get it, get
yeah,
it up and built and
yeah.
whatever. And so I don't know, it is kind of like exponential, I guess, like the growth it can feel like as far as like what you can build and do different things. So it's funny. It takes me back to those moments,
Yeah, yeah, no,
hearing you
it's
say
it's
that.
one of those things I find it's like this love-hate thing. Like I hate that I can't figure it out, but I also love the process of figuring it out. And so yeah, I know what you mean. For me, I guess my rule of thumb is when you're ready to put the laptop through the wall, just take a break. Put it aside, go do something else. And it's really weird because you come back to it an hour later, a day later, and it's always something stupid that you're missing, and you solve it in 5 minutes. And you could have worked all night on it, but if you just like take a break and you come back and it's like, oh, I missed a comma. So,
You're
and
making me laugh right now. Sorry, I just interrupted. You're making me laugh right now. Literally today, like
yeah,
an hour before this conversation,
yeah,
I we have this bug, and basically, anyways, this bug was not doing what it was supposed to do, and I thought it was potentially because there were like competing like pieces of script on the form
yeah,
that were like competing, and that's what was introducing this bug. Turns out it was just one of the forms had the incorrect security roles assigned to it, and I spent like an
yeah,
hour going through these plugins, like what is
yeah,
going on, disabling
yeah,
them, enabling them, like this
yeah,
does not make any sense. And
yeah,
then what gave me the thought was I like wrote it out in our like building team group chat and was like, hey, I'm having this problem. If anybody has a chance to peek at it, like I feel like it's driving me crazy. And like
yeah,
10 seconds later, just after writing it out, I was like, wait, let me check the form security roles.
yeah,
Sure
yeah,
enough, that it was missing
yeah,
on there, and that's what it was. And so
yeah,
I don't know. I'm laughing because that is literally my day today,
yeah.
like what I'm going through
It's
right
so
now.
common.
So
Yeah, it's so common, and yeah, it's just part of the process. And I mean, it's still like even people who are really experienced, it happens. And yeah, I there's times where I make mistakes where I'm just like, man, my juniors would be embarrassed for me right now. But it happens, and you just move on.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wanted to, I think that's awesome. I wanted to transition the conversation as well and
yeah,
talk to you about communication. This
yeah,
is like a hot topic on the show. I love
yeah,
talking about it because
yeah,
I feel like if you can understand the skill of learning and understand the skill of communication, then you're going
yeah,
to be successful at like anything you can do.
yeah, yeah,
And so I like in getting to know you as well, you'd also said that communication was a differentiator.
yeah,
And I guess I just wanted to give you the floor on what's your approach
yeah,
to improving and leveraging this skill
yeah,
of communication,
yeah,
especially in technical circles, I guess, technical
yeah,
roles.
absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, I'll just start with communication is the whole ball game, right? If you cannot communicate, it doesn't matter how technically brilliant you are. And let me share a quick story. So you've probably never heard of a guy called Ignaz Semmelweis. He lived in the 1800s and he discovered germ theory, basically why doctors wash their hands before they treat us today. It's basically the reason we're all alive right now. Um, and he discovered this in the 1800s. And he tried to convince the medical and the scientific community. He lived somewhere in Europe, I think Austria, something like that. And the medical and the scientific community were just not ready for this. And Semmelweis just could not communicate his ideas effectively. And it drove him insane. He ended up being put in a insane asylum, and he died a broken man because he was so convinced he was right, but he could not communicate his ideas. There's another guy I think in the UK, about the same time. His name was Robert Lister. He also latched onto this idea of germ theory, but unlike Semmelweis, he was able to communicate his ideas. He was able to put on tangible demonstrations to show people the concepts and why they should believe him. And he's basically the reason that doctors wash their hands today. And so that's just kind of a brief example of why you've got to be able to communicate. If you technical brilliance is not enough. You've got to be able to communicate those ideas. And I guess in terms of how you go about getting good at it, there's a few things that you can do. So, firstly, I would say study the masters, right? Find people who are great communicators. It doesn't matter what field they're in, study the masters. TED Talks are a great place to start. They are some of the most interesting and effective communicators on the planet. I'm personally a big fan of Seth Godin. He's kind of the godfather of modern marketing. And in his talks, he always starts out by talking about something seemingly unrelated and then ties it into the topic, kind of like washing your hands. See what I did there? And so I shamelessly copy his style. And I'm a lot clumsier at it than he is, but yeah, it seems to work. So yeah, I would say study the masters, do what they do, um, get as many at bats as you can. Find every opportunity to lead a workshop, lead a meeting, speak at an event, something like that. If you don't have any options, go to Toastmasters. I did that for a bit, and that dramatically improved my skills. I used to get terrible stage fright. I used to literally have to write out a verbatim script of what I had to do. It literally said, stand up out of the chair, walk to the podium, introduce yourself. Like that's how bad I was. And by doing things like Toastmasters, it starts to help you be more confident, be able to organize your thoughts and present. So get as many at bats as you can. And then the last thing I would say to do, this might sound a little weird, but I would say become a voracious reader. Reading is the secret sauce for almost every successful person in the world. So if work was an Olympic sport, reading would be the banned substance. Like that's how big a competitive advantage it gives you over everybody who doesn't. It develops your brain. If you read fiction, it helps you learn to empathize and see the world through the eyes of others, which is incredibly important for communication and for persuasion. And it also gives you lots of interesting stories that you can share, like hand washing. Again, see what I did there? So, yeah, so I would say, yeah, so again, study the masters, do what they do, get at bats, and then become a voracious reader. That will dramatically improve your communication skills.
You just gave me, I think, my next LinkedIn post of that communication is an Olympics. If a communication was an Olympic sport, reading would be a banned substance. That's
Yep.
fire. That's fire. So,
Yeah,
and
do it, man.
it's funny. So growing up, I despised reading.
Yep.
My interesting fact in high school was like the last book I read for fun was Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is like
Yep.
for like third grade reading level. Like,
Yep.
and I uh, I wouldn't say my reading comprehension is amazing still today.
Yep.
That's why I didn't enjoy it, because my mind just wanders and
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
3 pages later and I have no idea what I just read.
Yep.
And that happens less, but still happens sometimes. But I got the motivation to start reading because I wanted to have a bookshelf filled of books
Yep.
behind me,
Yep.
um, like in my on my screen. And so I
Yep.
was like, okay, well, every smart person has a bookshelf in their background. I need to
Yep.
have a bookshelf, and I can't have a book on my bookshelf I haven't read. I mean, come on. So I
Yep.
was there was a, and I still definitely do, not as much as I used to, but like got into a season of like habitually reading, and I feel
Yep.
like I don't know. I feel like even if it's not like super complex reading, but
Yep.
just like digesting language, like and
Yep.
just words, if anything, vocabulary and like
Yep.
reading and seeing and contemplating words that you don't regularly use,
Oh, 100%.
and
Yeah.
things I feel like has been big for me.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, it doesn't have to be reading in the traditional sense, right? If taking a book off the shelf doesn't work for you, I mean, I do it on my iPad, right? That's how I like to do it. If you prefer audio, if you've got a Spotify subscription, there's tons of books on there that you can listen to as part of your Spotify subscription. And so if that works for you, do that. It's the same thing. So yeah, and I would also say don't feel like you have to read stuff that would be impressive to others, like, oh, well, everybody else is reading Sapiens, so I've got to read Sapiens because Bill Gates said it was a really good book. I mean, look, if Harry Potter is your jam, read that, right? You start somewhere. Just yeah, you even if you're reading Harry Potter, you are going to be miles ahead of somebody who's read nothing.
Sure. So, okay, kind of in the same vein of communication as well, but kind of taking this and applying it to, actual work and what we do. You had mentioned that something fun about you is you try to bring a lot of fun energy to either your demos or your
Yeah,
client conversations. I mean, do you have an example or a story
yeah,
or some tips and tricks of
yeah,
when maybe even your willingness to embarrass yourself in a demo was like
yep,
memorable or
yep.
positively impactful?
Sure. Yeah. So way too many to mention, but I'll tell one. So this is pretty recent and pretty incriminating. So my fellow MVP Rami Moonla puts on an event here every November in New Zealand called the New Zealand Business Applications Summit. And last year I gave a session at it where I talked about what the age of AI means for you and me as consultants. So how we need to respond to that now that we're seeing AI do stuff that we've traditionally done. So Griffin, you and I would have learned by creating tables and columns in Dataverse till our eyes were about to fall out of our head. And a copilot can do that for you today. So it's like, okay, what does that mean for us as consultants? And so as part of my presentation, I wanted to illustrate how large language models work. And I got this idea in my head that I wanted to use music, and I just started teaching myself piano that year. And there's this YouTube video by this Australian comedy trio called The Axis of Awesome, and they talk about the four chords that rule the world. It's highly entertaining, but basically every song you've ever loved is some variation of the same four chords. And so I'm like, right, I'm gonna bring my keyboard in and I'm gonna illustrate this as part of my demonstration. And so it seemed like a great idea at the time until I'm trying to lug this thing across the street from my office to Microsoft to do the demo. And anyways, there was a guy there at the conference who was way better on piano than me, so I pulled him in to like do play the chords for me. And so the presentation went off well. So here's where it goes south. Earlier this year, back in June, I got to do the session again for Sarah Jones on her virtual roundtable, and it's a session that I really love to do. I'm really passionate about this topic, and so I'm really excited that I've got a chance to do it. And I decide that, you know what, I'm going to take this up a notch. My piano skills have improved, so I'm not just going to illustrate the four chords. I'm going to play some songs that use these chords as well. I'm going to play several songs that use them. And then in the demo, I decided that not only was I going to play the songs, I was going to sing along with them as well. And Griffin, it was 3 in the morning. It was the middle of winter, and I'm getting old. My voice is not what it once was, and the evidence is on YouTube. It's pretty incriminating. I don't think I will ever live it down. Um, Everybody got the idea, and they told me that my next studio album should be called "Make It Stop."
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely some wisdom between being memorable but not too memorable. So yeah, that's how I completely embarrassed myself.
Man. Yeah, that's funny. That's a good story. That's a good story. I don't even know what to say, honestly. So I that's super cool. I enjoy just I guess talking about product demos and things. I also think that like I think it's a differentiating factor
Yeah,
between a lot of consultants and architects.
yeah,
But I also think it's a learned skill. Like I don't think it's, you're either good at it or you're not.
yeah,
Um, and so I think there are a lot of tips and tricks to doing it well. I think that
yeah,
like for one, you need to be yourself. Like don't be a robot. Don't
yeah,
like understand that something could go wrong and don't act like it's the end of the world.
yeah,
Like speak to it or have a backup tab where it's already been completed so it doesn't
yeah,
stop your entire demo or
yeah,
anything like that so you can continue
yeah,
and speak to how you'll address it or whatever. But
yeah,
so I think there are a lot of skills like being like quick on your feet really
yeah,
is important.
Yep.
Being witty helps as well. Everybody likes to laugh every once in a while, you know.
Yep.
So I know for myself, I don't know. I think there's definitely a fine line of like self-degrading like humor, you know, sometimes you know, I think we all know the
Yeah.
time where people are like dogging on themselves too much. It's like, all
Yeah.
right, relax, you know.
You
So
gotta
like
be.
there's definitely a line.
Yep.
Yeah. There's
Yep.
definitely a line, but I think a zinger for yourself is, you know, it helps make it like humanizes you, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
like not
Yep.
being perfect, you
Oh,
know. And
totally.
so
Totally.
I I agree. That's funny. You said this is a crazy transition, but I mean, you're talking about singing and having a memorable experience,
Yeah.
in a mistake that you made. I guess I wanted to ask you as well, what's like another kind of mistake that's taught you another valuable lesson? And what's driving this question is again, when I met you, you said that it's a miracle you're still employed. And so I like I kind
Yeah.
of just wanted to
Yep.
like I love coming on here and talking about successes, but I love coming on here
Yep.
and talking about failures as
Yeah.
well. And so what's like a mistake that's taught you a
Yeah.
valuable lesson? And that's a huge
Yeah.
question. So,
Yeah. So I was thinking about this yesterday, and it's funny. I don't think it's so much a single mistake because I've made so many. It's more this unifying theme, right? I mean, I have done everything from trying to sing at demos at 3 in the morning. I have had bridges burned earlier in my career when my life was falling apart and my personal life was kind of impacting my work life. Yeah, I mean, I've had lots of mistakes and screw ups. I guess the unifying theme is you've just got to keep going, right? You've got to find that next thing and just keep trying. Because if you quit, right, you're done. If you say that's it, I'm never doing this again. I'm just going to sit on the couch. I'm just going to watch TV. I'm done. Then yeah, you're done. You lost. But if you keep at it, at some point you're going to find something, right? Something's going to click for you. If you just if yeah, but and it's not fun. It's never fun to get up after you've completely screwed something up. It's never fun after you've had a rough meeting with a client and having to go back to them and try to repair the relationship or move things on. But you've just got to do it. And if you do, um, you will find that over time things start to work for you.
yeah.
And I'm not done making mistakes. I'll probably make mistakes today. I will definitely make some before the week's out. So it's just, keep, what's the next thing I need to do? How do I just keep moving on?
Yeah. I That's awesome. I wanted to kind of also ask you, not really get technical, but I guess the power platform specific part of the
Yeah.
conversation. Like you are a Power FX guru, and I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, but the first being, what kind of first drew you to Power FX?
Yeah. So this is kind of embarrassing. I When I was doing Mark's mentoring challenge a couple of years ago, and he was talking about the path to MVP, he mentioned that there was not a lot of content out there about Power Effects at the time. It was less than a year old when I first did the challenge, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to make this my thing. It's so much easier to be the only person talking about something than it is to be the nth voice. As much as I love Power Automate, there is no way I can add to the conversation in any way that Damo Bird or Paul Marana hasn't, or when it comes to Canvas apps, any way that Shane Young hasn't. And so for me, I went deep into Power FX, and I probably initially did it for the wrong reasons, but I really love it. I really just got into it and I was like, Microsoft have created something incredible here. I mean, if you know how to use Excel, you can pretty much create anything you want to on the Power Platform. You can create apps, you can create automations, you can create data, you can create co-pilots and all kinds of stuff if you know how to use Excel, which pretty much everybody does. And so it's like, I can't believe they're not talking more about this. Like, this is a huge deal. And so, yeah, that was kind of how I got into Power FX and just really started to fall in love with what you can do with it.
Where do you see Power FX evolving over the next few years, like going into the future? Because I
Yeah.
feel like right now, like I feel like it's it's becoming more and more important, like just as
Yeah,
a skill for like consultants to
yeah,
know. I mean, how is it going to evolve
yeah,
going into the future, these changes that you see coming? What
yeah,
excites you about that
yeah,
potential?
yeah. So, I mean, I guess for me, a lot of it's still in preview, right? So you don't see a whole lot of Power Effects in Project Land today because it's mostly in Canvas apps, a little bit in model-driven apps, and Dataverse formula columns. That's pretty much the only stuff that's GA. We're going to see a lot more of this coming into play as Power Effects starts to become GA across more of the Power Platform. They've really developed it at lightning speed. So yeah, a lot of it's still in preview. The stuff that I'm most excited about, so Power Effects Functions, which is previously low-code plugins. I've been pretty heavily involved in that preview process, and so I'm really excited to see that moving towards GA. If I can throw my wish list out there, something I would really love would be able to do client-side customization in model-driven apps. So all the stuff we write JavaScript for today, I would love to be able to just use Power Effects for that. That would be amazing. I'd love to see Microsoft extend it to their ERP products. I'd love to see them bring it into Power Automate. So instead of having to use the expressions to be able to use things like Power Effects, that would be amazing. So that's some of the stuff that I would like to see coming. So if there's any product managers from Microsoft watching, that's Nathan's wish list.
There you go. I would agree kind of with something you said before, is that it's really powerful and it's really intuitive. Like,
Yeah,
um, yeah, it does feel like Excel functions. And recently I was building a slew of calculated columns.
yeah,
And right now they say don't use calculated columns, use PowerFX columns in there.
yeah,
So was doing that and was basically writing. I'm not going to say they're super complex, but more than just a simple if statement.
yeah,
Um, and so it was definitely a cool like just experience doing that. I
yeah,
do think that there's often times where there's like stuff I want to do with
yeah,
Power Effects that I can't currently do in like a
yeah,
calculated column.
yeah,
Um, and so I mean just naturally with it being so new, there's not a ton of documentation and stuff out
yeah,
there on doing
yeah,
that stuff. So
yeah,
um, I would definitely echo what you're saying though, and encouraging people to learn it because I definitely feel like it's just more and more as Microsoft especially is pushing this like low code or citizen development,
yeah,
like it's only gonna continue to touch and replace different parts in the Power
yeah.
Platform. So
Oh, absolutely. It's going to become a critical skill set. And I think as we move into this age of agentification, which they're all talking about at Ignite last week, I see some real potential for power effects there. I mean, imagine an agent reasoning over a problem and determining that we need a Canvas app or we need something in Power Automate or we need a calculated column and then just being able to create that in Power Effects on the fly for us. Like that would be amazing. Or even kicking it up a notch, you can branch the source code for Power Effects and create your own functions. I've not tried it yet. It's on my list of things to do. But imagine, the agent is reasoning over this problem and determines, hey, we need a function that does this, and it's something hyper specific to the organization. It's not something Microsoft would ever develop. And then the agent goes and creates that function in Power Effects and adds it to the library. Like, amazing. So
yeah.
yeah, so that's stuff I get very excited about.
Yeah, rightfully so. Rightfully so. Man, I we are about at time. I'd love to wrap this up, transition us to the after
Yeah,
hours happy hour
yeah,
segment of the show.
yeah,
Um, there's too many things I want to ask you questions about. One, I see the
mhm,
piano in the background and your
yeah,
passion for learning to play piano.
yeah,
Something also I think is
absolutely.
interesting is moving from the States to New Zealand.
Yeah,
We could probably talk 30 minutes about that transition and everything that's
yeah,
been like as well. And as well, something that's really important to you is being involved in your church outside of
yeah,
work. And
yeah,
I guess I kind of wanted to give you the floor.
yeah,
Who is Nathan,
yeah.
and just hear more about you and your personality and things you're passionate about.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm one of the few Americans in New Zealand. There's a few of us, but not heaps. But yeah, I've been here for quite a while now, and yeah, I'm obsessed with the piano. I started learning it a couple of years ago, and I just I just really love it, and I've even started songwriting, and just yeah, it's just something I do for me, and I really enjoy. But yeah, when I'm not at work, I do spend quite a bit of time involved in my local church. So I'm part of a church here in Auckland called Trinity, and we're in the southern part of Auckland, and South Auckland is kind of a traditionally deprived area. It's starting to change, and there's pockets of it that are a bit more affluent, but it's traditionally been a pretty challenging area. You've got people that come from some really broken backgrounds and a lot of need. And what's really cool is we've got kind of a gathering of everybody. They come from we've got this melting pot of migrants who have come from all over the world. We've got people from all different backgrounds. You've got professionals like you and me. You've got former gang members, former sex workers, like who are just part of this church and turning their lives around. It's really really amazing to see. And so yeah, I mean, I don't have any official position. I'm just kind of one of the guys who does stuff as needed. But yeah, it's such a blessing to be involved with it and to yeah, just see people's lives being transformed and being able to help and work in an area that just has such desperate need. So yeah,
Sure. That's super awesome. Thank you for sharing and your
yeah,
boldness. I as well am a man of faith and involved in my local church as well. I've recently been
awesome.
serving. I do like the audio tech, so
Yep,
mixing the EQs of microphones and instruments and
yeah,
making sure everything sounds good
yep.
during worship and
It's
during the
important, man.
message
Yeah,
and people give me too much credit. We have a lot of presets, so it's easy, you know.
yeah,
But so I'm not doing too much, but I've been doing that for a little over a year now, and
yeah,
I've
awesome.
grown to really enjoy it.
Yeah,
I understand, you know, we don't talk about religion very much on this show, and I
yeah,
understand that, you know, not everyone is going to be interested in a religious conversation.
yeah,
But I think that even if your thing isn't religion, having like a life-giving hobby.
yeah,
Now, I'd love to talk to you about why religion could be your
yeah,
life-giving hobby, but just having something that's life-giving, you know. And
yeah,
I don't necessarily think for some people it is, but some people have certain hobbies that I feel like also just suck the life out of you as well. And work
yeah,
sucks the life out of everybody. So it's like
yeah.
having a having a life-giving hobby, you know.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And it's community, right? I don't know if you've ever read Scott Galloway's blog. He writes the No Mercy, No Malice blog, and he's a fascinating guy. But he's an atheist, but he always talks about how people need community, and since most of culture has moved on from religion, there's this huge gaping hole for we need community. And for me, it's just such a blessing to have these people in my life who are brothers and sisters to me, and I'm able to be there for them. They're able to be there for me. Especially because I don't have my family nearby. I mean, it's amazing, and so yeah. I mean, I think for anyone, even if Christianity isn't your jam, just find a way to get into community, because that will change your life.
Completely. Yeah, I completely agree. And the community is one of the biggest impacts, like the biggest one of the biggest things of joining a church or getting involved with something because
Yeah,
you can go through life together with people. Because I think a lot of
yeah,
times we believe that we're the only person struggling with something or going
yeah,
through this hardship or, you know, we always it's really easy for us to feel like we are the exception
yeah,
to something being hard, and
yeah,
you often find when you can get vulnerable and real with people that you're not, and
yeah,
it's okay
yeah,
to share that, and that's
yeah,
I agree with you as well. So
yeah.
Nathan, man, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
I say
thank
this
you.
every
This has been
episode, but
great.
connecting with people is my favorite part. I
Yeah,
just I love, you know, picking people's brains, trying to tap into their expertise, and as well as just getting to know them. If people were listening to this and were positively impacted by anything you had to say or your insight and wanted to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so easiest way to get in touch with me is through LinkedIn. Just throw me a connect, and yeah, always happy to help out, technical questions, mentoring, whatever it is you need. Yeah, just give me a connect, and always happy to help if I can. So
Sweet. Yeah, I'll be sure to throw a link to your LinkedIn down in the description down
yeah.
below. So thank you to you for sticking to the end of the video. My name is Griffin Lickfeld, the host of the Citizen Developer channel, and I'm excited to connect with you in the next one.